Hey there, you're listening to episode 137 of the Finish Line podcast, where we discuss the intersection of faith, generosity, and personal finance. My name is Cody, and I'm here with my co-host and brother Keelan and special guest host Julie Wilson from Women Doing Well. Today we're talking to Karla Merrell. Karla found herself stepping deeply into both faith and generosity through a sequence of events during the beginning of COVID. One memorable act of generosity set the stage for an exciting and adventurous life of faith in the years that followed. You don't want to miss what Karla has to share. Before we get started, we've spent years speaking to and learning from some of the most passionate givers and leaders in the world. We've distilled down some of the most impactful frameworks, strategies, and tools into short weekly emails that leave you with practical ways you can take your generosity to the next level. If you're not on the list already, you can sign up for free at finishlinepledge.com. With that, let's get to the interview. Well, we're here with Karla Merrell, and we have the pleasure of Julie Wilson joining us again from Women Doing Well. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so great to be here. And Karla, I love having you on this podcast. And I'd love for you just kick us off a little bit about your background spiritually, kind of your upbringing and how that, formed your view of generosity.
Thank you, Julie. I'm so glad to be with you guys here today to share a little bit about my story. My background spiritually is very particular. I was actually born and raised in Panama. That's in Central America, and that's where this accent comes from. And I was raised Catholic, and I was baptized. And when I'm asked this question, I always said, I knew God's name, but I didn't have a relationship with him. Actually, I didn't even know that was possible. In my culture, a lot of baptisms happen because there's a big party after. And that was, I think, my case. I have heard the term Sunday Christian or holiday Christian. I wasn't even that. I got baptized. I did all the sacraments. I went to a nun school and preschool, like both, because Catholicism in my country is a big deal, and private school is a religious schools. And with all that background, you will think, right, that I had a relationship with Jesus. But the reality is that really that part was never introduced to me. So I feel like in the past, we had a distant relationship. Like I would know God, like I'm in earth and he's in heaven, and there's this separation between us. So I feel like knowing that now, looking backwards, I had a big influence in my generosity, because generosity was not a conversation that we will have at the table or in any public places, is that it wasn't even a thing. And I feel that generosity, in my view, was something reserved only to the very wealthy that could really afford to be generous. So I think my background in that sense was really influenced by my lack of active participation with the church, and also from the socioeconomic and cultural distinctions of where I grew up.
So how did that faith journey, that relationship with Jesus start for you?
Well, Women Doing Well has a lot to do with that, along with other outreach ministries. It really started with COVID. I think everybody has their own COVID story, and lots of them are really sad. But mine had actually a great outcome as a product of COVID, which I actually lost some family members back in Panama. My dad got really, really sick. This is in 2020 when people, if you had COVID, you pretty much were going to die. So it was a very scary time. And because I didn't have that intimate relationship with Jesus, I was just so scared and paralyzed that I couldn't even pray. I couldn't find the words to pray. And I realized now that I also didn't have a practice of prayer, and knew that prayer is something that you can do as a conversation. So I was out of words, but also in the midst of facing possibly a terrible outcome after COVID. I was found that to save my dad's life, he had to go through this treatment that was very, very expensive. And my family reached out to me, and all the, brothers, all the siblings got together, and we were trying to figure out like how to manage this situation. And I felt that everybody was kind of like pointing at me because in my family, I'm the first generation that, moved to the United States, lived and stayed here, right? And I felt that, and maybe this was my perception at the time, but I felt that, oh, it seems that I'm the one who has to pay the bill. And I found myself in a place of extreme scarcity mindset where I really realized that I did not have a generous bone in my body. And it was a conversation with my husband where he told me, well, if we need to pay for this, we can just pay it. And in my immense scarcity, I just couldn't go through the thought of having to do that. And as I was wrestling with these thoughts, I got an email from Women Doing Well, inviting me to participate in this generosity journey, right? In this pathway. And the title was Plan, Purpose, and Passion. And the 3 Ps, and they really resonated with me. And it was like, I really need this. I really need to passionately find a purpose and to really find what's the plan for me, because I'm not liking the person that I'm figuring out I am, right? After this a lack of generosity in myself. And that was the beginning of that relationship with generosity. But also when I started putting in practice those, I feel like the relationship with Jesus started years before that, but those years were preparation for this big awakening, for this big breakthrough on which I had to make a decision. I really remember there was a passage in Luke where they were talking about serving God or serving the God of money. And I found myself in that passage. I said, this is me. This is me choosing money over God. And that was really, it was a breakthrough. It was really when I started thinking that I needed to be more generous and that I needed to fortify that relationship with Jesus. So I knew that I was depending on him and not on what I could provide by myself. So that was the beginning of a longer journey. But in summary, thank you for the Women Doing Well. That was part of a really big part of that awakening and that journey.
Karla, can you share a little bit more about what you learned about God's nature through this exploration of generosity?
Looking back, and even in my present life, there's 2 things that come to mind. One, that we are absolutely dependent on Jesus, 100%. We think that we're really smart. We think that we have these gifts. We think that I consider myself a go-getter, right? And I think a lot of people that are type A personalities can relate to that. And we think that we can do it all. And when you get in such a humbling moment, like the experience that I had in 2020, you realize that you really don't depend on your own, that you're completely dependent on Jesus. So that was the first thing that came to mind. And the second thing is that if you accept that dependence, you have a certain biblical knowing, which is, I think, bigger than hope, bigger than optimism. You have this certainty that Jesus got you, even if things don't go the way you want them to go. Even if you find yourself in those paths of actual scarcity, right? Like maybe your financial resources are not what you wanted, or maybe you are not as ahead in your career as you wanted to be, or maybe you wanted to have 3 kids and you only have one, or you have none. Even when you're faced with those difficult realities, and I call it biblical hope because it's more than just thinking positive. There's this certainty that Jesus is with you in every one of those circumstances.
Yeah, I think there is so much to unpack in that. And you're exactly right that it goes hand in hand with, as we kind of step into generosity, really kind of acknowledging that God is the only one in control of everything and we're not. It melts a lot of that scarcity feeling away, because the feeling of scarcity really comes from the belief that we are in control. And when you're in control, then you either have or you don't have, and you need to get or whatever. But when you're fully surrendered to God and you're like, hey, whatever I need, God will provide it. And maybe I don't know what I need, and he's going to provide what I actually need instead. But if you have that kind of trust, then that feeling of scarcity really starts to dissipate. I'm curious, and it sounds like a lot of these things were all kind of happening at once in your life. When you first got connected into Women Doing Well there, what was the process that you went through getting involved, and where did the specific changes in mindset begin to happen along the way through that experience?
It started with that email, right? So kudos to the marketing department because really it spoke to me. And I feel like in 2020, we were even more connected to our phones and to our emails because we were at home. So it came at the right moment, at the right time, with the right wording. So immediately, especially because it was also the end of 2020. So I feel like every end of the year, people are looking for a reset. So everything was God's perfect timing to receive that email. And I immediately was an immediate yes. I was like, yes, passion, plan, purpose. I want that. So I signed up and then went into, remember in 2020, Zoom calls and 12 weeks of meeting with people online. It's the norm now, but not that long ago. It was like, this is new. Now I have to meet with people for a whole hour on Zoom. So that was my first stepping out of the comfort zone, right? To be on camera after you being secluded in your house, maybe you're wearing the same yoga pants forever, like to actually have to face people, right? Online and be sitting down in a meeting for an hour, which is now is so normal. But back then, that was the first stepping out of the comfort zone. And then meeting with a virtual room of strangers, talking about your most intimate thoughts, right? Like I am now free because I feel that this testimony could help a lot of people to tell you I was not a generous person. But in the moment, it's not something nice. It's not something that you want to face. It's not something that you want to admit to yourself, let alone to other people. That you might feel judged. You might feel that they are perfect Christians and you're not. So there was a lot of feelings, right, on those calls. But fortunately, I got a great leader and a great group. Everybody was really engaged. I think we all were looking for the same things. So strangely, it felt safe because it was a room of strangers, and there's some people whose names and faces I remember, and some people that I don't, because it was actually also a big group. But we got so intertwined with deep thoughts about what we think about generosity. And as we progress, we were shown videos and stories of people that have given everything, the shirt on their back, and people that also accumulated a lot of wealth throughout their lives. And they came to a point of their lives that they had no purpose. They had a lot of wealth, but no purpose. And then found a purpose, found even, I will always remember this video about a couple that their life was so superficial and empty. It looked perfect, but it was superficial and empty. And even their marriage was strained because they had nothing deep to connect with. And once they let go and starting putting their wealth, their time, their to service of the kingdom, how that even fixed their marriage, right? That part of the journey really impacted me because I have two young children, so my life is very busy, but there's going to be a day when they leave the nest. And I was like, oh my God, is that going to be us? Are we not going to have like anything to build on, like anything to talk about? And we're going to be bored playing golf or something. Like it shook me, I saw maybe a version of my future self. And those little moments, and when you're able to share with other people and honestly tell other people, look, sometimes I don't give because I feel like I might lack tomorrow, or I feel that I have to save every penny, or I feel that maybe I have security now, but who knows what will happen. Seeing myself in a video and also seeing myself in other people's testimony make me feel safe and make me feel like I'm not the only one who has these feelings. I'm not the only one whose generosity has not been nurtured. And during that 12-week journey, it was a little seed every week, right? It didn't happen overnight, but it was a little seed every week nurturing that. It's almost like when you go to the gym and you haven't gone in a long time and you do a couple reps and then you get really sore and it hurts. And then like, maybe I don't go tomorrow because I don't want to hurt again. But over time, that muscle starts strengthening and getting leaner and more beautiful. And then you start seeing the beauty of it. And then you're willing and able to do the work. It was the same thing. It was the best analogy that I can give you. Like at the beginning, it hurt. I didn't want to see that. I didn't want other people to see it. But as it developed, and I think was the couple's video, and also that when we studied Luke, those two moments was like, this is something that I want. Like I am not that person yet, but I want to be. It made me feel that I wanted to be a better person. I have made mistakes like everybody, but I didn't consider myself a bad person. But I saw so much room for improvement during that journey. And it was so significant to me that right away, right after the 12 weeks were over, there was an offer to become a facilitator. And I'm like, absolutely. So I went and embarked in another journey, like back to back into learning how to be a facilitator and how to just bring this to other people, because I could think just from the top of my head, other friends in my circle, other people that maybe secretly are debating with the same thoughts. So I think it's 12 weeks for a reason, because you need that time and that space to really find yourself and make a decision. I think like everything in life, there's a point that you have to make a decision. Do I want to dwell into the person that I used to be, or I'm courageous enough to want to change and become the person that I didn't even know I needed to be? And it was a call. Like a lot of people, I'm sure you heard that a lot. Like a lot of people tell you like, I got the call. Well, I got the call. And it's a feeling. It's a way of being. And then you just make the decision and keep exploring. And honestly, what happens is that God just starts throwing things in your way for you to take the next step and the next step. And, that was 5 years ago, believe it or not. And looking back, it seems like it was a minute ago, but it was 5 years ago. And looking back, it was just stepping stones to the next level of relationship with Him, the next level of accepting my dependency on Him, and the next level of just being open to be more generous and to show other people how to be more generous. Because you haven't touched on that yet, but I think the first story that I told you about the way I grew up has a lot to do with the way I ended up being and how I realized I am a product of my background. And you have to decide if you are going to be a consequence of that background, or if the buck stops with you, if you want to create a new generational story, which is what I see now in my own family.
Oh, I love that. Karla, I would love to hear, because I have been so fascinated by different minority communities and how they experience generosity versus a typical American journey.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about how generosity and money look in a Hispanic context. Like, I know these are generalizations, but what's your experience been?
And I'll speak for myself, right? Because I told you at the beginning that I'm first generation, moved to the United States. I came here by myself. My whole family is still in Panama. And I, quote unquote, made it, right? The American dream, the whole very stereotypical. But in a way, it is a stereotypical, but looking back and reflecting on my journey, there's a lot of things that are actually true. Like the fact that most of us, or at least in my case, grew up, and when I talk to my friends, it's the same thing, grew up with this mindset of money doesn't grow on trees. If I have $1 for every time I heard that, I have found myself saying that to my kids, and I immediately like, nope, back up, back up. And let me rephrase that, because I heard it so many times when I was a kid. And also I come from a middle-class family. Both parents worked full-time outside of the house. There was no such thing as remote work. Outside of the house, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. In Panama, actually, it's very common to work on Saturdays. It's a 6-day work week, not 5-day work week. So you work Monday to Saturday. So you create this mindset that in order to have money, in order to have something, I'm not even talking about a lot of money, in order to pay your bills, and put food on the table, and go to school and all that, you need to work really, really hard and save everything that you have, and honestly not share, because you don't know when you're going to need it. So you need that rainy day fund. You need to put your money under the mattress. Like there's all these like cultural, I think conscious or unconscious concepts about money. Money is something to be held tight, really tight. Your hand is constantly closed all the time. And I realize now how that affects you mentally and spiritually. Even like I think in your physicality, like you hold on to money so tightly. Even now, this might sound ridiculous, but like general tipping in the United States is about 20%. In Latin America, in some countries, there's not even a concept of tipping, and most of them is about 10%. I have lived here for over 20 years. I still, when I have people visiting from Panama, they're like, tipping is 20%. Like the horror in their faces. And I see it the way I see it now. I'm not thinking about what's the rule. I'm thinking about like, this will help this person who served me so well, especially working in Christian circles. Like we tip generously because we're appreciating of the service that is rendered, right? This is somebody that this will help feed their family. Like it's a complete different concept, but it comes from, for something, I'm not giving you like a really small example because it's ingrained in our culture of money is meant to be held tightly. Don't share it. Also, you have to understand that in most of our countries, security is a big issue. So somebody may even try to take it away from you. That's really, really ingrained in our culture. So I feel like all those things left imprints on me that were very subconscious. And my children were born here. So without knowing, I was also passing that along. I have caught myself so many times repeating the same things that I heard because it's inside of me, right? And it's constant work on replacing those thoughts. Now it's the other side, right? With my children, they're growing in the church. They're coming to the church. We work constantly in being, it hasn't come naturally. We work constantly in being a Christ-centered family. And I can see already, my kids are 11 and 8. I can see already the shift. If we are walking, this happens all the time. We're walking somewhere and there's a person playing the guitar or asking for money or whatever. No hesitation. My kids is, we're going to give them money, right? Like, it's not a question. It's a fact. That doesn't come from me because I wasn't raised that way. That is the work that God is doing in their hearts for being them immersed in an environment where generosity and helping other people is normal. That's a gift. That's a gift, and even if it took, I don't want to age myself, of 40 something years to get there, it's a switch in generations. They will have never had the opportunity to learn that if I didn't decide to change. I had to make that decision first. I had to step on it first so they could step on it. And I think that's an influence of the church. That's an influence of a family that prays together. That's an influence of so many little things that the same way I've got an imprint of be honestly a little selfish and guarded with your possessions. For them is appreciate what you have, be grateful and share.
Karla, I have so many thoughts just from the way that you describe the messages that you heard growing up. And I think about my own upbringing. And I think the core message that I believed as I was college age and just growing up is that you can have anything and everything that you want. And the only thing holding you back is your willingness to go get it. And it's really symptomatic of the same issue that you're describing, which is what Keelan said earlier. It's control. It's belief that we have full control over our own circumstances. And we need to be resilient so that we can bounce back from anything that happens to us. And we need to store up in case we need it later and set ourselves up for our own future that we create. But I was kind of on this parallel track that you're describing because it was 2020 when Keelan challenged me to set a financial finish line and turned my whole life upside down as a result of really realizing that we serve an incredibly generous God. And I think in your story, as well as my story, it did not take long of lifting that generosity muscle to start to feel like other people need to hear about this. I want to share what has changed my life. And I think this motivates a lot of people to evangelism, but in the specific area of generosity and just saying, I can't keep this to myself. I got to find a way. You signed up to be a facilitator for a Women Doing Well pathway, but as the world started to open back up, how else did this show up in your life? How did you start to mobilize other people in generosity?
Little I knew that was just like the first step of many other steps, right? So as everything of people started meeting again and all that, and I started sharing with more people, there was a profound need that started in me after those 12 weeks of being immersed in that culture that I became hungry for deep conversation. And it's not, I don't know if because also that was paired with the fact that I was just with my small family indoors for so long that when I came out, right, it was more about, and to this day, I still remain like that. I don't do very well with superficial chit chat. I want to have profound conversations. And I said, I'm going to start, there has to be other women that want that too. So I'm going to start my own virtual group. I wanted to continue and talk about God and faith and purpose and so many things. So I started meeting, and I did that for about 2 years, meeting virtually with a group of women. And that group of women started really small and then kept growing. And in that journey, I was listening because I was learning about the dependency that we're talking about. So I started listening to, that little voice inside of you that some people call intuition. And now we know it's God, of like, what else is there for me? And it got into my head, don't ask me why, that I just needed to become a runner. At this point, I'm 43 years old. I have never run in my life. I told you was my upbringing. My parents work a lot. So I never play. When I told you that I never played any sports growing up, nothing. Because to play sports, you have to stay after school going somewhere. And my parents were working. So I didn't have that chance. So when I told you that I had no muscle memory, there was no memory because I never really did anything. And it got into my mind that I was like, I think I need to run. And the whole idea, and I share it with my group, was I think I need to do this because I have this admiration of people that at 4 a.m. in the morning, I used to have a traveling job. So I would wake up really early to go to the airport. And I would see these people like running. And I'm like, why? Why are they doing that to themselves? And they seem so happy, so like fulfilled and proud. And it was more like that image that I look up to. And if you remember, I just told you the path of generosity and getting to know Jesus made me want to be a better person. And for me, that image, that fulfillment, that pride, that discipline, to be honest with you, was an aspirational desire. So I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to run. And I went and obviously failed miserably, ran about 30 seconds and thought I was going to die. And it was also like this summer, not a good time in Florida to do that. And God, little I knew it was just going to be the beginning of so many things. But I persevered. And to make a long story short, I basically trained from couch to half marathon in 11 months, nonstop, like nonstop. I just finished, kind of like Women Doing Well. I finished one thing and I started the next one in a row. So I went 5, 10, half in a row. And I had so much time to think, to reflect, to connect. I think running was my connection with God. And now that I discovered the power of prayer, I could be here and I could be praying in my mind. I could be grocery shopping and I could be praying, right? Like it's a continuous conversation. I didn't know that then, but I discovered that through running because I had so much time to be by myself that I could start having these little conversations. And one story that I would love to share is that my first act of giving came out in a run. I was running and I saw a post on social media of somebody a mom of several kids. I think she had 4 to 6 kids. It was a lot of kids. And she was asking where she could got some cheap pots and pans because hers were so beat up. And she wanted to buy something out of Walmart or something. And she was asking, where can I find the cheapest pans? And I was running and I couldn't get that post out of my mind. I was like replaying in my head. And I had just bought my very first set of very expensive pots and pans, the ones that are guaranteed lifetime. And I was so proud and I was so excited when they came in the mail. And I just kept thinking about it. And then I will never forget, it's one of those moments, right? Like I'm running and I live in a community that has a lot of like forestry. And I saw a little bunny and a bird and a little bird. And they just like got in on my way, like where I needed to come through. And they just like stopped like right in front of me. And there was nobody around me. And I was like, what is this? Like these little tiny animals. And they just like stopped on my way. And I just thought that immediately come to my mind, I was like, you have to get this woman the pants. Like no question about it. And then immediately, and like the little animals were like, was such a great, unbelievable moment. And I just turned around and I ran straight home and I got online and bought the pots and pans, the same set that I had, and sent a message to this lady on Facebook, which I don't even remember her name. And I have never known about her after that. And I told her, could you give me your address? I'm going to send you a set of pots and pans, but not the Walmart ones that you wanted. I'm going to get you a set that is going to last you your whole life because your kids deserve more than, beat up pans. So it's my gift to you. And I hope, this is helpful. And she thought that was not going to do it. And sure enough, like I got confirmation when she received it. So, and I have to tell you the great thing about, that was the first time, right? And the great thing, and that's why I will never forget, but I think the great thing about doing those spontaneous acts of kindness and generosity is that the moment you make that decision and you just do it and don't think about it, later on, you will not know that immediately, but later on, what I have found every time something like that has happened, you never miss that money. And that's where the dependency and the biblical hope that God has your back in every circumstance, that's when he never fails because you never think about it anymore, right? And somehow, I think it looks different for everybody, somehow you never miss that. And that has happened with random GoFundMe campaigns or somebody at church whose kid is sick. And then you just act on that call. And then at the end of the month, you really didn't miss it. Somehow something else happens where God will provide, right? And I think this is also from Woman Doing Well. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong. I remember also one of the lessons that talk about what you planned, you're not going to get it on the same way. It's not like if I give $100, you're going to get $100. That's so vivid in my memory because I was like, oh, you're not? I thought that was the whole deal. Like if I give $100, I'm going to get $100 back, right? That was like eye-opening to me. It's like, no, you're not going to get the same thing, but it's going to come back. And looking back 5 years, yes, it always does, but it's not on the way you think it would. And at the end of the day, everything checks off.
Yeah, that was Tim Keller. And he basically says, when you plant a seed, you don't get back a seed, you get back something else. You get back food or a flower. But what I also love, and he doesn't go into this, is that that's the abundance because every piece of fruit has seeds in it that produce more fruit. And so we reap in some way the beauty of generosity, but it doesn't guarantee a good life. That's a lie. Because Jesus was the most generous person who gave every ounce of his blood so we could be in relationship with God. And that was not an easy journey that he took. He sweat blood. It was so bad. We're going to go into this Lent season soon. And just reflecting on the cost of discipleship, that's Bonhoeffer. And I think generosity is like that for me, especially. because it's not a natural spiritual gift. I don't have the gift of giving. I have other gifts and they're easy for me to give. It's effortless for me to share some of those things. But with giving, it's been a really long journey. And I'm so grateful for my time at Generous Giving and at Women Doing Well. Cause I'm like, I think God had to have me work in it because I'm that bad. Like I just need it every day. But what I love is that you cannot outgive God. I have story after story after story where my little teeny act, and he's like, oh, let me just show you how much more I can do. I'm going to outdo you by like 20 times. And it's really beautiful. But I do think that, we do have to keep it straight. God doesn't need anything we have. We get to give and be part of his great plans and get the blessing of knowing that we're investing in his kingdom. And that does come back to us in spiritual fruit, but it's not always money, obviously.
I love that. And circling back to your, question, it didn't stop there. Like, I was able to share with these women, inspire them. And then I took and kind of like, what is that saying? Put your money where your mouth is. When I achieved this milestone of like actually becoming the person that I never thought I would be, which is another, if you think about it, another manifestation of breaking that background that I just talked to you about. I had no reason, no chance to become a runner. I just told you I never played anything. There's no athletic bone in my body, like it just happened by the grace of God. And I knew at every painful step, I knew that I couldn't do it on my own. And that became so significant in my life that I had another moment where it's like, more people need to know about this. So I went and said, I'm going to start a running group for women that hate to run because there's so much, but I want to make it faith-based. I was set on that. I was like, I'm not athletic, but God didn't give me this for me to be a marathon runner that's going to have like medals or anything like that. There's another purpose for it. And I got it right away. I knew it had to be faith-based. So I went and knocked on doors in different churches. And it's like, I have this idea. I want to do this. And there was one church that said, that sounds great. Do it. And I did it. And it started again, like small. And I did it for 2 years. And over 100 women went through that group. And a lot of them, it was another outreach without me even knowing what an outreach ministry was. A lot of these women didn't go to church. I was discipling myself, like women that never went to church, the women that didn't go to church. Some of them were baptized, some of them were not. Some of them didn't even believe in that. And it was so funny to see because it was like 8 week of stretches. I will have a new group every 8 weeks. And it was seeing the same story over and over, which was such a gift to me. Seeing them like the first day where I would say, okay, if you're looking for a group that we're just going to run, this is not the group for you. I can refer you to this other one and this other one. This is about your spiritual growth, right? And we're also going to run. And there was something, and I asked a lot of people, like, why did you stay? Like, you knew we were going to pray. That's not what you signed up for. So why did you stay? I was like, because you were so relatable. And I was so inspired by the fact that you became a person that you knew you couldn't be without God. So I just wanted to know more about that. And you could see how at the beginning, first meeting, it never failed. Okay, now we're going to pray, which is so normal in our circles, right? And people were like timid. And some people didn't want to hold hands because it's right after COVID. I had a huge bottle of hand sanitizer. It's like, we can hold hands, people, and then we do some hand sanitizer. It's fine. And we will like hold hands and I will pray. And you have to understand that some of these women, they have never heard somebody praying like a conversation. Like they are used to like maybe a memorized prayer and they're like, what is happening? That's beautiful. That's great. And by never fail, by week 5, maybe, people were like, we're going to pray, right? Okay, hold on. Let's pray. Like they wanted it. They wanted it, right? And I feel like for me, that was one of my utmost acts of generosity because I also didn't imagine that running a consistent group where you have to keep people engaged for that long was so hard, and in person and the logistics, and I had a full-time job and all that, right? And for me was given that time and given that gift that wasn't mine, that gift of inspiring people and moving people and motivating people was very fulfilling to me, but also there was so much sacrificial giving in it. It was time that I wasn't with my kids. I had to prepare what we're going to talk about. I had to actually go and suffer and do the actual run, right? Over and over and over again, which is something that doesn't come natural to me. And it was so fulfilling that I don't think it waited on me, but looking back, there was so much generosity in it. So turns out I do have some generous bones in me, right? Turns out God did it because I finished a season and I wanted to do another one and another one because there's no accidents, right? Like, oh, God puts everything together. I ended up, part of my background is I'm an event planner. I had an event planning company for 10 years and it led me to work doing TEDx events. And it's something that another aspirational desire, right? Like I wish I could sometime like be in a stage like that, having an important message that will leave a legacy. But I had no idea what I was ever going to talk about. And little I knew those 2 years, God was preparing me to spread that message. So when I told you that I applied like a couple times with some crazy ideas and never got selected, and one day I just like, I'm going to talk about this generosity experience. And it just, in 1 hour, I just sat and filled out the whole application and I got in. And having the privilege of doing that was the best thing I've done in my life because it will transcend. It will help my kids. It will help people that I don't even know. It will help people to know that when you start, and I actually close my grip during the talk and say, when I decided to stop holding on so tightly to all the things that I thought I could control and all the things that I thought belonged to me, a whole new world, a whole new season of my life open. And it's an invitation, more towards women, but I think it could be useful for everybody to give your time, to give your money, to give your talents, and start holding on so tightly because I didn't want to fall into like, it will come back to you because that's not the expectation. That shouldn't be the expectation. It will just make your life better in ways that you just can't even imagine. Because if you told me that the first day I sat on that weird Zoom meeting with all the little squares of people will lead to fulfilling one of the longest, biggest dreams of my life, which was being on a stage, but more like to have a message that it was relevant to people and it will actually build something that will go beyond you. I would have never thought that was even possible for me, right? So I think that's the kicker in generosity. Like it starts with something small and you think you're gonna get back something and it just unleashes something so much better, so much greater, so much transcendental than yourself that it only inspires to want to keep doing it over and over again. Because I live in the constant expectation of what's going to happen. And that's a great feeling. I'll trade anxiety, I'll trade worry 1,000 times for the constant expectation of what God is going to bring in.
I love everything that you just said. And one way that I would kind of summarize really what's been a theme through your story, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that generosity is really kind of the language of God. And I'm trying not to downplay prayer because I feel very strongly about prayer. And I know you obviously do too. All of us do. But it's one thing when you're talking back and forth with God, but there's like another layer to how we communicate with God. And I was thinking back to when you were talking about the pans and hearing, what felt like from the Spirit about stepping into this action of getting the pans for the other family. And I think some of the important things to pull out of that, one is that you were in a place of listening where you could really hear from God. And that was the running kind of created some of that space for you. But two, you responded immediately. And I think it's easy to talk yourself out of interacting with God. Like that, I can think of many times in my life where I had a moment like that, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to think about it for a little bit. And then it's gone. You get like a window to do it. And then by doing it, it's like engaging in conversation with God because, and you've said this many different ways, but where you don't necessarily get back the same thing, but you get back even more, that's like hearing God respond. So every time, we step out in faith, really, but in that generosity conversation with God, then we hear his response. We get to see that in real time play out in the story that follows afterwards. And that creates a hunger for more and more of that conversation, more of this relationship. And that's one of the reasons I think generosity is such a powerful catalyst for growth in faith, which has obviously been huge in your life, as you're talking about how your faith journey has really paralleled your generosity journey. But as you take more and more steps like that, it tends to evolve into a crazy story. Like we hear it over and over and over on the podcast, is this same theme of like, at some point I decided, all right, I'm getting into the story. And it's that first story that you shared. And then it just spirals on and on and on. People, it's sharing all these crazy things that happened. And it's because of this conversation, a dialogue back and forth where you just want more and more. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that kind of theme and how that's played out.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And I will replace the word crazy with exciting.
Yeah.
Right? Because I feel like my life ceased to be ordinary and it became really exciting because you are always on that expectancy of like what God is going to do. Like even recently, again, I will use the example again of the muscle growing, right? Because it doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey for a reason. And the more you do it and the more you get good at it, the more also you get good at listening and discerning what God is trying to tell you. And you start getting out of your own way and you start trying to put your agenda over. And going back to what you said with prayer, I used to pray the way I thought you were supposed to pray, which is a longer list of the things that you want, right? No. I more and more as you go into that conversation, like you said, it's more like a conversation. It's like a dance, right? Like now I go, now you go, right? And as I also learned that prayer, it's more about like not what God is going to give me, what I can do for him and for his kingdom, right? Which will in turn come back somehow as the things that are written already in his plan. Like, I know you already know what's the end of this story. Help me understand it. Help me accept it. Help me say the right things, do the right things, be in the rooms that I need to be for that to unfold. Like, and this keeps coming back to me, like that feeling of absolute dependence on his plan is what makes the whole thing exciting. Because even recently I was in a point of transition career wise. And as you said, you have a small window. When you're able to say, I trust you, God, that you are going to put me where I need to be so I can flourish. That's something that you cannot do in a scarcity mindset because all the if will show up and will just drown you. The doubt will just drown you. It will consume you and it will paralyze you and make you unable to take that step. But trust and complete dependence, it supersedes all that. And it becomes, instead of crazy, like I said, it just becomes that exciting expectancy of what else is he going to do when I decide to be obedient, right? When I decide to, and I think people, or at least I used to think like that generosity, I thought it was like one dimension. Generosity equals, because of my background, equals to wealthy people that have a lot to give in spectacular ways. I'm not one of those people, therefore I can't be generous. And I feel like my journey in particular have demonstrated the different layers of generosity because I honestly did not see it then, but like years later, I realized like doing the running group, doing the online group, sharing with people, and even starting getting into a position where I can openly speak with a friend that maybe I know that she is not where I am in her spiritual journey. Maybe it's not even a churchgoer, or maybe like me is baptized but doesn't really have the relationship. And somehow I know that because I like to get in deeper conversation. Just being able to, if she's maybe venting with me about her problems, turn around and say, can I pray for you? Or, someday the pastor was talking about this sermon. It made me think about you. I think this will be really helpful, and talk about that with that person that is maybe a non-believer, maybe not a churchgoer and all that. That is generosity in itself as well, because it takes a lot, less and less every time, but it used to take a lot of getting out of my comfort zone to be able to do that, at the risk of even giving up that friendship. Maybe that friend thinks that I'm the crazy church lady and never wants to talk to me again. But it's such an act of generosity to her or to him. And I have learned to appreciate that generosity is not one dimensional. It's not just money. Money is a great way to express generosity, but there's so much sacrifice in other things that you can do. That, God calls you to give joyfully and to give sacrificially. And I never realized how many sacrifices I made in the way, because I thought sacrifice was only sacrificing your bank account, right? And that's not true. I think doing several different acts of generosity will make the financial one easier. I do think that it will make that easier. And I think many of us are at a point of lives that our time is our biggest resource, right? So I think writing a check sometimes is easier than putting on the time and dealing with people and having to help them and disciple them and be patient. So I think sometimes those things, maybe I just do an anonymous online contribution and forget about it, right? I don't have to deal with the person and the problem. And so I hope this is an invitation for people that, like me, think that there's only one way to give, and realize that sometimes those other acts are so much more significant that you will wish you can just write a check on it. You will wish that you can just throw some money at it and forget about it. And I feel God called us to express that generosity in more ways than one, and get the exact same outcome, right? Get the exact same reward.
Karla, it's been so fun to hear how God delivered you from a scarcity mindset. He's given you some really fun and exciting opportunities to express generosity in your own life, pass that on to your children. But I'd love to hear, what are you most excited about when you think about the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, I'm so excited about, and this has been manifesting a lot lately, but I'm so excited about, again, it all started with that one email, right? And even some things before that. But I actually went into full-time ministry a couple of years ago. Another thing that I never thought, I'm a corporate baby. I never thought I could ever do that. And I started my journey in full-time ministry 2 years ago. And I have felt the more you do, the more hungry you become. Like, I think one of you said it really well. And I have felt in the last 6 months, just like this big hunger that says, God, this is being a school. This is the ministry school, because God is calling me to something greater, to something bigger, to a bigger impact, just like the running, just like everything else, right? And I'm so excited for what he's going to do in the next 5 years. I feel like these first 2 years where my school, where what I needed to start, you guys don't know this about me, but before I was an event planner, I was an attorney. So to be an attorney, the first law firm that has to give you the chance, right? And then you build a reputation, etc. And then one day I decided this is not it. I want to be an event planner. And I started maybe volunteering. And then I built a business and I had big clients. Well, those transitions that happened in my life, this will be like the third or fourth time. So when I started, it's like, I want to go in ministry. I want to give other people. I want to go in mission trips. I want to help the poor. I want to do this. And I started like everybody starts, or like every transition, you start small. And I feel like God has just been preparing the table. I just feel it. Because when you start having this constant communication, it's almost like you see it coming, right? And I have so much expectancy for my next 5 years. I'm not going to age myself, but I'm close to enter a new decade. And I feel like it's going to be the best one. It's going to be the one where all these little things, everything is going to make sense. The fact that I went to law school, the fact that I did events for 10 years and worked with women for so long, the fact that I became a runner, the fact that I went to, everything is going to commingle together for like the biggest act of generosity, the biggest act of impact, right? And I feel that it's already impacting my children. My children literally think I work for Jesus. Like they literally think that. When I told them I'm looking to do a transition, they're like, but you're still going to work like Jesus stuff, right? Like you're still like, it never even crossed their minds to say, you're going to go be an attorney again, or you're going to go corporate. Like they know like this is mom's jam. And I'm so proud of it. Let me just tell you, I'm so proud of that. They think that, right? And they're like, you're going to work like with another, they don't know what a ministry is, but they're like, they're going to work like helping people, right? And I'm talking about God. I was like, absolutely. And I'm excited about that because there's so much runway ahead of me, that there's so much more to do and give and accomplish for the kingdom and for other people. And I'm very excited because I'm so comfortable now talking about it that I'm very excited for the discipleship that I get to do, not only professionally, but also like in my circles, just with regular people, with people that I meet at the supermarket or with friends. I'm so excited that I feel so comfortable with myself that to openly talk about my faith and tell other people, there's this big thing that you're missing out. Join, I'm so excited about that. It makes me happy. And I think my friends know this about me and maybe tolerate it, but also appreciate it. I'm so excited to be in a place where I am so secure of who I am and how authentic I want to be that I'm not willing to hide anymore. And that excites me to be able to share it with just normal people, just regular people every day. It's very exciting to me because lately I've been hearing a lot about God wants you to make more disciples and to know that you don't have to be special and you don't have to be chosen by like a big ceremony. It just happens and it's just your call as children of God that you can do that. That's exciting for me.
I know I already said this, but I just love hearing you talk about this stuff. And everything that you're saying, I would say it almost exactly the same way. And I have literally heard Cody use like the similar, same kind of phrases in talking about his own life. Julie, I'm sure you feel the same. Hearing you talk about this kind of like hopeful excitement of like, I don't even know what God is exactly doing, but I'm just excited for it, whatever he has coming. And I can see how he put some pieces together. I know he's going to use the other pieces. Just hearing you talk like that gives me so much faith in the God that we serve, because I know he's speaking the same language to so many other people, and it's just really refreshing hearing you talk like that, because I know that is available for everybody else that's listening. And I'm sure many people listening know exactly what you're talking about, but there's probably some who that sounds amazing, but they have not felt it themselves. And I hope that if that's somebody that's listening right now, that they will take that first step like you did in the beginning of your story, and that starts just an exciting spiraling circle of conversation back and forth with God. As we get to the end of the episode, I did want to leave some time for our manager's minute. We like to just end every episode with a practical action our listeners can take to step into their role as stewards. So, Karla, do you have a suggestion for our listeners today?
Yes. And I want to do all something simple, right? I'm going to offer you two. I know it's one, but I'm going to give you two because one I already mentioned. I think the blessing, I think social media is something that we all know that separates us a lot instead of connecting us. And there's a way, I feel blessed to have found a way to be able to give testimony and repeat that story about the lady with the pots and the pans, because then you can see that social media also allows you to do really great things. So one simple thing that you can do is go into everybody in every town and city and community. There is a moms of or dads of or parents of fill the blank city, county, whatever. So we have one here where I live. I live close to Stuart, Florida, and there's like 30,000 moms in the Stuart moms. It's incredible. And people ask for advice and recommendations and all kind of things. Those are like the best forums ever because this is real people. So find somebody, be intentional, and find somebody in your parents of or moms of. And there will be people there that will post, I'm looking for a job, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for pots and pans. And bless somebody that you will never, ever, ever hear from again. And that's okay. Because it's a gift more for you than it is for them. And I can guarantee you that not only exists on my town's Facebook page, it's in every town. There's always some people using these outlets to ask for help. And most of the times it's not money. It's something as simple as I'm looking for some pots and pans. And instead of giving them that recommendation, just get them for them. I hope that story becomes your story because it's a great story to have. And the second thing that I did recently, that it was also one of those impulse decisions and it had paid so much dividends. There's a ministry called Fellowship of Christian Athletes. It's new in my town, at least for soccer. And there was this mom that was putting it together and I didn't even know she needed help, but something told me, great, this is such a great idea because I just told you I never played anything and I feel that God did that intentionally. But what you don't know is that through my life, I always felt as a teenager, later as an adult, that piece of I never played sport and was part of like a sports team and everything that entails. I always felt that was missing in my life because I feel like people that grew up playing soccer, that's all they talk about, the good times when that happened, or they play baseball. And I never had that. So I always felt that was missing in my life. And instead of feeling resentful about it, I really admire and cultivate that in my own children. So when FCA was trying to get together here, I said, I want to help this mom do that. And if there's a Fellowship of Christian Athletes where you live or something similar, make sure that that's an easy way to invest in the future because this particular ministry is the sportsmanship and the teamwork and all the great things that you get about that, but it's also discipleship outside of the church. And it's just so beautiful. I had the privilege to invest in it and put my own kid through it. And it's just so incredible that I would just encourage anybody to give any amount of money to your local kids league of whatever they're playing, flag football, soccer, whatever they're playing, that will also teach them about Jesus. It's just a perfect combination. And I experienced that in my 40s. If I can help a kid to experience that as a kid and then have all this abundance for the rest of their life, what a gift. So if you have one near you or if you want to start one, that's a great way to also be generous.
Yeah, I think that is a great suggestion and really perfectly mirrors a lot of the story that you shared, all kind of tied in at the end there. Karla, thanks so much for being with us today. This has been a lot of fun, and I am very excited to see what God continues to do through your story. He's clearly been very active, and just appreciate you sharing your time with us.
I appreciate being here. I have enjoyed myself, and I think it was a great summary of how far, sometimes you cannot see how far you have come. And I'm even more excited to maybe inspire somebody to just take the first step.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show, guys. If you want to find any of our references or links from today's show, you can always find them in our show notes at finishlinepledge.com/episode 137. Before we finish up, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever stopped to answer the question, how much is enough? A financial finish line is designed to help you do just that. Our 90-day Finish Line Pledge breaks down the process into 3 easy steps. Step 1. Define how much is enough for your family to spend in a single month and use that as your monthly spending budget for 90 days. Step 2. As God provides money to manage, set aside any margin outside of your finish line into a separate bank account. Step 3. After 90 days, explore the millions of ways you can use the margin you've set aside to create joy, purpose, and impact in God's kingdom. Want to learn more? Check out our website at finishlinepledge.com. That's it for today. We'll see you next time.